The northern boundary of Yellowstone National Park is not a line on a map, but a wound in the legal fabric of America. For 50 square miles, the park bleeds into Idaho, a desolate stretch of lodgepole pine and forgotten trails where no roads lead and no humans live. It is beautiful in the way that a frozen corpse is beautiful, still perfect and utterly indifferent to the warmth of life. The rangers who patrol this region do not call it by its legal name. They call it the quiet zone. They call it the place where the laws run out. They call it, in the whispered moments between shifts at the ranger station, the place where things go to disappear. This is the true history of the zone of death. Not the legal theory, but the horror that lives there. It's the stories that never made it into the law journals, the faces that were never seen again. In 2005, a law professor named Brian Kalt published a paper that should have changed everything. He pointed out a simple, terrifying fact. The Idaho section of Yellowstone had no residents, which meant that if a crime were committed there, no jury could be impaneled. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to a trial by a jury from the district where the crime occurred. The District of Wyoming has jurisdiction over all of Yellowstone, including the Idaho sliver. But to form a jury for a crime committed in Idaho, you would need jurors who live in Idaho and fall under Wyoming's jurisdiction. There are none. There have never been any. There will never be any. Kalt sent his paper to the Department of Justice before publication, hoping they would close the loophole. A summer intern responded, questioning his logic. The U.S. attorney said he had no power to change the law. The Department of Justice said nothing at all. For 20 years, the loophole has remained open. No one has used it yet, but the rangers know. They have always known that the zone is not just a legal anomaly. It is a place where the normal rules of the world begin to break down, where things happen that cannot be explained, where people go in and do not come out. His name was James Calder, and he was a wildlife photographer from Seattle who had spent his career chasing the perfect image. He had photographed polar bears in Svalbard, jaguars in the Pantanal, snow leopards in the Himalayas. He was not reckless, but he was driven. The kind of man who believed that rules were suggestions, and that the truly great images were always found just beyond the boundaries. In the autumn of 2018, he came to Yellowstone with a specific goal: to photograph the wolves of the Pelican Valley. The valley was closed to visitors during the calving season, a fact that James found frustrating rather than cautionary. The rangers had posted signs, erected barriers, made their warnings clear. James saw them as challenges. He entered the restricted zone at dawn, his camera equipment strapped to his back, his heart pounding with the thrill of transgression. The valley was beautiful in the early light, the grass golden with frost, the air so cold it hurt to breathe. He moved slowly, quietly, scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. He found the den by accident, depression in the earth, hidden beneath the roots of a fallen pine. The scent hit him first, the thick, musky smell of wolf, of meat, of pups. He raised his camera, his finger trembling on the shutter. He never took the shot. The wolves were on him before he heard a sound. Not a single wolf, but the entire pack, moving as one organism. Their bodies low to the ground, their eyes fixed on him with a focus that was almost surgical. The alpha male struck first, his jaws closing on James's forearm with a force that shattered bone. The others followed, their teeth finding his legs, his back, his throat. The attack lasted less than a minute. When it was over, James lay in the frost, his camera shattered beside him, his body torn and bleeding. He did not die, not quite. The wolves withdrew as suddenly as they had come, disappearing into the trees as if they had never existed. It took James 6 hours to crawl back to the trail. When the rangers found him, his face was a mask of frozen blood and unspeakable terror. He could not speak for weeks. When he finally found his voice, he said only one thing, over and over. I was in their nursery. I was in their nursery. The rangers did not ask what he meant. They already knew. The wolves of the Pelican Valley do not attack humans without reason. But when you cross into their world, when you threaten their young, you become prey. It is not malice. It is biology. And biology, in the zone of death, is the only law that matters. The Norris Geyser Basin is one of the most volatile places on Earth. Its ground is thin, its waters boiling, its air thick with the smell of sulfur and dissolution. The boardwalks that wind through it are not for convenience. They are for survival. Step off them, and you step into a landscape that can kill you in seconds. In July 2016, a young woman named Sable Scott stood on the edge of that boardwalk, her phone in her hand recording her brother. Colin was 23 years old, adventurous, heedless. He had decided that the boardwalk was for tourists, that the real experience lay beyond it, in the forbidden zone where the thermal pools steamed and bubbled like the gates of hell. He was looking for a place to hot pot, an illegal practice of soaking in the naturally heated waters that had already killed more than 20 people since 1890. Sable filmed as he walked away from her, his figure growing smaller against the backdrop of the milky blue pool. She filmed as he bent down to test the temperature, his hand reaching toward the water. She filmed as he slipped. The fall took less than a second. One moment he was standing, the next he was in the water, his body consumed by a liquid that was 160 degrees hot and acidic enough to dissolve flesh. He did not scream. There was no time. The heat stopped his heart before his brain could register the pain. Sable ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until she found a ranger station, till she collapsed at the feet of a man who had seen too many tragedies to be surprised by another. The rescue team arrived at the pool as the sun was setting. You could see Colin's head and hands above the water, his body suspended in the acidic brew. But the light was fading. The pool was too dangerous to enter, and a lightning storm was moving in. They had to wait. When they returned the next morning, Colin was gone. Not dead, gone. The acid had dissolved him completely, leaving only his wallet and his shoes floating on the surface. There was nothing to bury, nothing to mourn, just a pair of sneakers, and a memory of a young man who thought the rules did not apply to him. Sable still has the video. She has never watched it. But she knows it exists, a record of the moment her brother became part of the thermal system. His body returned to the elements that had simmered beneath the earth for millennia. The Rangers offered to delete it, to spare her the horror. She refused. "Someone needs to know," she said. "Someone needs to know what happens when you don't listen. The Norris Geyser Basin is still there, still boiling, still waiting. The boardwalks remain, the signs remain. And every year, someone steps off the path, drawn by curiosity or arrogance or simple stupidity. Most of them come back, some of them don't. The pool does not care. It has been dissolving things for millions of years. Few more bodies will not change its chemistry. The abandoned mines of the West are portals to another world. Dark, cold, filled with the ghosts of men who died underground. Great Basin National Park has dozens of them. Relics of a mining boom that ended a century ago. Most are sealed, their entrances blocked by steel gates and warning signs. But seals can be broken, and signs can be ignored. In 2015, a young man named Caleb decided to explore one of these mines. He was an adventurer, a YouTuber, a collector of forbidden places. He had heard rumors of a mercury mine in Snake Creek, a shaft that had been sealed for decades, but might still be accessible. He found it after hours of hiking, a dark opening in the rock, the steel gate pried apart by someone who came before him. He entered with a headlamp and a camera, his heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. The air was thick, heavy, sweet. He did not recognize the smell. He did not know that hydrogen sulfide, the gas that fills abandoned mines, has a sweetness that is also a death sentence. It paralyzes the olfactory nerves first, so you stop smelling it, even as it fills your lungs. Then it paralyzes everything else. He walked deeper into the mountain, his headlamp cutting through the darkness. And then he found them. 50 skeletons. Piled in a chamber at the end of the shaft, their bones arranged in postures of final agony. Some had died reaching toward the entrance, their fingers clawing at the rock. Others had curled into fetal positions, waiting for an end that took hours to arrive. They were miners, perhaps trapped by a cave-in or a gas leak. Or they were something else. Explorers like him, drawn by curiosity, consumed by the mountain's silent hunger. Caleb's headlamp flickered. The sweetness in the air grew thicker. He tried to turn, to run, but his legs would not obey. He sank to his knees, his camera clattering on the stone. His last conscious thought was of the skeletons, of their empty eye sockets, staring at him from the darkness, welcoming him to their company. They found his body 3 days later. The Rangers who entered the mine wore full breathing apparatus, their faces hidden behind masks of plastic and rubber. They carried Caleb out in a bag, his camera still recording, its battery long dead. When they reviewed the footage, they saw everything. The skeletons, the darkness, the final moment when Caleb's headlamp illuminated a face that should not have been there. A face in the rock, carved by hands that had been dead for centuries. Watching, waiting. The Rangers sealed the mine again, welding the gates shut, pouring concrete into the gaps. They do not speak of what they found. They do not speak of the face. Some doors are locked not to keep people out, but to keep the death inside. The statistics are well documented. Every year, people vanish in national parks. They wander off trails, fall into crevasses, drown in rivers, freeze in snowstorms. Most are found. Eventually, their bodies return to families who will spend the rest of their lives mourning, but some are never found. Some simply disappear, as if the earth opened up and swallowed them whole. Yellowstone has more than its share of these vanishings. The geothermal features can dissolve a body in hours. The wildlife can scatter remains across miles of wilderness. The terrain can hide a corpse for centuries. But the Rangers know that some disappearances cannot be explained by ordinary means. There is a valley in the zone of death that the Rangers call the Quiet Place. It is not marked on any map. It is not mentioned in any guidebook. It is a pocket of the park where compasses spin, where radios fail, where the normal rules of geography seem to bend. Those who enter it rarely return. Those who do return are never the same. One ranger, who served in the zone for 15 years, spoke of finding a cave filled with human bones. He marked the location on his GPS, reported it to his supervisor, and returned the next day with a recovery team. The cave was gone, not hidden, gone. The cliff face where it had been was solid rock, unbroken, as if the mountain had healed itself overnight. Another ranger told of following a missing hiker's trail into a dense forest. The footprints led to a clearing and stopped. No sign of struggle, no sign of flight, just emptiness, as if the hiker had been lifted into the sky or pulled into the earth. The ranger looked up and saw something moving between the trees, a shape too tall to be human, too fluid to be animal. It watched him for a moment, then vanished into the shadows. He did not follow. These stories are not shared with the public, are not included in official reports. They're whispered between rangers in the quiet hours, when the fire has burned low and the darkness presses against the windows of the station. They're the true history of the zone of death, the history that no law journal will ever publish. In 2005, a man named Mike Belderain shot an elk in the Montana section of Yellowstone. He was arrested, prosecuted, and eventually pleaded guilty, serving 4 years in prison. His lawyers tried to use the zone of death loophole to get him off, arguing that the Sixth Amendment violation applied to Montana as well as Idaho. The judge did not buy it. Belderain went to prison. The loophole remained open. But what if Belderain had shot something else? What if he had shot a person? The Rangers think about this often. They patrol the zone alone, their radios crackling with static, their eyes scanning the tree line for movement. They know that if something happens to them in that 50 square mile stretch, there may be no justice, no trial, no jury. Just the silence and the trees and the long walk back to a world that has forgotten this place exists. One ranger, a woman named Alina, who had served in the park for 20 years, told a story that captures the horror of the zone better than any legal theory. She was patrolling the Idaho section on horseback, following a trail that had not been used in decades. The forest was dense, the light dim, the only sound the crunch of hooves on pine needles. She heard something ahead, a voice, human, crying for help. She urged her horse forward, breaking into a clearing where a man lay on the ground. His leg twisted beneath him, his face pale with pain. He had been hiking alone, he said. He had fallen. He needed help. Alina dismounted and knelt beside him. And then she saw the wound on his leg. It was not a break. It was a cut, clean, precise, made by something sharp. She looked at his hands. They were clean. She looked at his eyes. They were not afraid. He smiled. Alina did not wait. She vaulted back onto her horse and rode, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She did not look back. When she reached the ranger station, she called for backup. They searched the clearing for 3 days. They found nothing. No man, no wound. No sign that anyone had ever been there. But they found the tracks, human tracks, leading away from the clearing deeper into the zone. And beside them, another set of tracks, larger, heavier, not human at all. They followed them to the edge of a cliff, where both sets simply stopped. Alina never patrolled the zone alone again. She never spoke of what she saw. But on quiet nights, when the wind blows through the pines, she still hears that voice, calling for help, waiting for someone to answer. The zone of death is still there, 50 square miles of forest and river and legal void. No one lives there. Few people visit. Trails are overgrown, the signs are faded, the warnings are ignored by those who come seeking something they cannot name. The rangers still patrol, alone or in pairs, their eyes scanning the tree line, their hands never far from their radios. They know the stories. They know the faces that have vanished, the screams that were never answered, the places where the earth seems to breathe. They know that the zone is not just a legal anomaly. It is a wound in the world, a place where the rules break down, where the darkness seeps through. And they know that someday, someone will use the loophole. Someone will commit a crime in that 50 square mile stretch, and when they do, there will be no trial, no jury, no justice. Just the silence and the trees and the long walk into a freedom that no one should have. The zone is waiting, has always been waiting. And when the time comes, it will not be a law professor or a journalist who discovers the truth. It will be a ranger, alone in the forest, facing something that should not exist, in a place where the law has no power, the zone of death. It is not a theory, it's a promise, and it will be kept.